Please be seated. The Assembly has resumed its sitting, continuing with Government Motion number 2. Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? If not, I'll call on the Honorable Minister for his right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Oh, Mr. Speaker. It's been a long couple of weeks. But I do want to thank the two members for their contribution, Leader of the Opposition and the Honorable Leader of the Opposition and a member from North Side. Leader of the Opposition, in a very dramatic and sensational contribution, raised some perceptions or some concerns that he may have had on the motives behind the amendments, and for the benefit of the doubt, the interpretation of the amendments. I do want to apologize to the Leader of the Opposition for disappointing him in pointing out that there is no alternate reason or no effort to deceive anyone, certainly not the members in this honorable House, and most importantly, the listening public. Mr. Speaker, the member raised a concern about our motives in the amendment proposed in number 2 of the Building Code regulations definitions. Those read, Mr. Speaker, the Building Code Regulations 2013 revision. In these regulations referred to as the principal regulations are amended in Regulation 2 by inserting, not repealing or replacing, but by inserting in the appropriate alphabetical sequence the following definitions. Fire code official means the building official or anyone to whom the building official has delegated all or any part of the building's official's authority under these regulations. And authority having jurisdiction means the building official or anyone to whom the building official has delegated all or any part of the building official's authority under these regulations. And the Leader of the Opposition was quick to point out, Mr. Speaker, that the 2013 revision read that Section 2 in these regulations, authority means the central planning authority. Building official or building official means the director, and director means the director of planning, and anyone to whom he has delegated all or any part of his authority under these regulations. Mr. Speaker, what the Leader of the Opposition hadn't taken into account was that there was a subsequent amendment to the Building Code Amendment Regulations 2016 and I'll read it in its completeness, Section 2. The Building Code Regulation 2013 revision, in these regulations referred to as the principal regulations, so the 2013 are the principal regulations, are amended by repealing Regulation 2 and substituting the following regulations. Definitions. 2. In these regulations, adopted code means a code that applies in the Cayman Islands by virtue of Regulation 3A to H, and building official means the Director of Planning and anyone to whom the Director has delegated all or any part of the Director's authority under these regulations. So I will go back, Mr. Speaker, where it says that in the exercise of the powers conferred, the Building Code Regulations 2013 revision, in these regulations referred to as the principal regulations, are amended by repealing Regulation 2 and substituting the following regulations. And when it comes to building official, that substitution is building official means the Director of Planning and anyone to whom the Director has delegated all or any part of the Director's authority under these regulations. So if I bring it back to today's amendments, Mr. Speaker, where I spoke about reducing bureaucracy, reducing costs on the fire sprinklers for duplexes or up to 8 apartments for 2-story buildings only. The building code spoke of the fire code official. And to the current amendments read, the Building Code Regulations 2013 revision, which is a principal regulations, in these regulations referred to as the principal regulations, are amended in Regulation 2 by inserting, not removing or repealing, but by inserting the following appropriate alphabetical sequence, the following definitions. Fire code official. So, Mr. Speaker, fire code official is referred to in the amendments, and this amendment in the codes and in the law, and this amendment is to simply remove any form of ambiguity or confusion, or persons may want to choose who they feel or challenge who the fire code official may be. And it's spelled out here that the fire code official means the building official or anyone to whom the building official has delegated all or any part of the building official's authority under these regulations. And so I go right back again, Mr. Speaker, and bear with me. I go back to the 2016 regulations where this is added to below. Building official means the Director of Planning and anyone to whom the Director has delegated all or any part of the Director's authority under these regulations. So, Mr. Speaker, we're just out of abundance of caution, we are simply identifying the fire code official, tying that to the building official, which is defined in the 2016 building code regulations. There's nothing.
Mr. Speaker, on the point of clarity, I wonder if the minister.
Leader of the Opposition.
I wonder if the minister would give me on the point of clarification.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the minister for giving way. Mr. Speaker, in the amendment of the building code regulations before us, subsection 2 says, the building code regulations 2013 revision. In these regulations, referred to as the principal regulations, are amended in Regulation 2 by inserting in the appropriate alphabetical sequence the following definitions. Now, it is true that we have had a further revision of those regulations for 2016, as the minister says. Why then, I wonder if he can explain why he has brought an amendment to the 2013 regulation. Where will this fit in the scheme of the revisions that has been subsequent to the 2013 one?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member for that intervention. Mr. Speaker, it is because the 2013 are the principal regulations. And we are amending those principal regulations, which were amended in 2016, to add these two definitions. So, again, the important part here, Mr. Speaker, is that there was no conspiracy. There was no heavy-handed threats to the director of planning to make these changes. There was no underlying or undermining or other reasons, as clear as I could put it, for adding these two definitions, other than to remove all ambiguity that continues throughout all of the codes, the building codes, the governing codes, in clarifying and clearly defining who the fire code official is. Mr. Speaker, the same applies to authority having jurisdiction, where this is a term that once again is mentioned several times throughout the governing regulations. And rather than doing a word search and trying to remove or edit every time authority having jurisdiction was mentioned, the government felt, and certainly those advising, that it was easier to simply clarify and to define the meaning of authority having jurisdiction by meaning the building official, as in the 2016 revision, or anyone to whom the building official has delegated all or any part of the building official's authority under these regulations. So, Mr. Speaker, I hope that provides some clarity for members and certainly for the listening public that there was no hidden agenda here, but simply the further clarification of the definitions and confirmation of the definition of the fire code official and the authority having jurisdiction. I am sorry that I could not be as entertaining and dramatic as the Leader of the Opposition in explaining these issues, his concerns. I also hope to, I'm happy to, I know that the Leader of the Opposition is a former Minister of Planning, and I'm happy to say to him that we are moving forward. No, you weren't. My apologies. Sorry, it works. My apologies. We are moving forward with trying to remove some of the liability from the government when it comes to construction. by developing local governing regulations. And I'm also happy to tell him that since 2017, there has been third-party plan reviews being carried out in this country. Mr. Speaker, every time we have consultation with industry, that is the number one request we get from them, is when are we going to move to full third-party inspections as well as plan reviews. Unfortunately, as the member pointed out, rightfully pointed out, you have to have several requirements in place as far as as professional qualifications, as well as the necessary insurances and coverage, and to be able to carry out these third-party inspections. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, it's also very important that those carrying out those inspections must be independent of the project. That creates one of the challenges where the professional firms in Ireland that would be qualified to carry out inspections, MEP inspections, are also the same firms that carry out plan review inspections. And if they carry out the plan review, then they cannot carry out the building inspections, because that would be, as the member rightfully pointed out, a conflict. But we are working towards that. We are working towards the professional certifications, both on contractors and on architects and engineers. And we are moving towards identifying further and greater efficiencies within the department, hopefully, like the other amendments in this amendment, in this motion, to reduce costs, in particular for the smaller developers and for the Caymanian people. Mr. Speaker, that is actually a good segue into the concerns raised by the member from North Side on the fire inspections. And I can say to the member that we certainly had consultation with both the Department of Environmental Health on the pools and with the ministry and the ministry responsible for the Department of Fire Services and with the fire services themselves. In fact, I can say here that the minister responsible for the fire department was insistent that those correspondence were all printed in the cabinet paper when I proposed these amendments. Mr. Speaker, they were quite supportive in moving in this direction. The Department of Environmental Health, in their comments, says the DEH agrees with and supports the ministry's effort of adopting the 2015 code for pools and spas. This is long overdue, as there was no substantial code integration prior to this. It is also encouraging to note that the Ministry of Planning intends to bring a comprehensive changeover of the building code regulations later in the year that will consider transitioning all sections of the code, including pools and spas, to the 2018 or 2021 editions. Mr. Speaker, I also want to further clarify that the 4-foot fencing or enclosure around the pools, the international code actually calls for it to include all pools, including residential and duplexes. Again, we did not feel that this was the time to add additional costs to residential homes and to duplexes. These are areas that we are focusing as a ministry and as a department in identifying efficiencies and reductions in costs, because these are A, homes for Caymanians, and B, duplexes are something that Caymanians quite often prefer to build as a form of investment. They can live on one side and rent the other side out until they've built up enough equity to move on to build another one or build their own home, and then they have an income from the duplexes. The member rightfully pointed out or asked the question whether this was retroactive, and the question is no, it is not retroactive, it is going forward. And he was right in asking the questions about the the hotels. And we are proposing an amendment, Mr. Speaker, that would have the hotels provide a pool access management plan, which would be approved by the director. So a pool access management plan. If you think about a hotel pool, there are servers, there are some lifeguards, there are security guards, there are always people in the pool. And so during the opening hours, they can identify security guards or others, or even have a lifeguard. And then when the pool closes, they would need to design the pool in a way, aesthetically or most economically, that they can actually close the pool when the pool is closed and unsupervised. So they will be able to provide a plan. And if we think about some of the hotels locally now, they generally have the pool in a more enclosed areas with 2 or 3 accesses off the beach and out of the hotel. They would be able to have for instance, they could put a gate there that they would close when the pool is closed, or they could do a removable pool barrier, which are readily available, that they would put around the pool in the evenings when the pool is unsupervised or closed. Mr. Speaker, on the removal of the requirement for sprinkler systems in the homes, well, there's no requirement in the homes right now, but again in duplexes and apartments, up to 2 stories and up to 8 units. Again, this is an effort because we were duplicating life-saving measures there where we were requiring the fire-rated walls, etc., but also requiring them to be sprinkled, have sprinkler systems throughout the buildings. They had to have a dedicated cistern that had enough water to run the sprinkler system for 40 minutes, 45 minutes. That is water that they cannot use for anything else. You can't use it to water your lawn. You can't use it for anything else. It's dedicated for that purpose. You had to have a dedicated fire pump. If that pump was electric, you had to have a dedicated backup generator. Or you get a diesel fire pump, which is much, much more expensive, cost prohibitive, if you did not want to have the backup generator. We have worked tirelessly at the request of developers, contractors, who have found that these requirements increased tremendously the cost of development of duplexes and small apartment complexes, the ones that Caymanians build, the ones that Caymanians buy, the ones that Caymanians rent. The developer, the contractor, the Caymanian was finding it difficult to justify the cost, the exorbitant cost, because we do not have the ability, or we do not allow in the Cayman Islands sprinkler systems to be hooked up direct to city water. So you would have to have the cistern, the dedicated cistern, not to be used for anything else, a dedicated fire pump, not to be used for anything else, and in the case of an electric pump, which is a more affordable one, a dedicated backup generator, not to be used for anything else. So now we have accepted that in buildings built out of concrete, and with all of the fire-rated walls and fire precautions within the construction, the necessary smoke alarms, etc., and the 2 independent, separate external stairwells for the second floors. Or they can choose to go down the route of putting the sprinkler system through. Either way, Mr. Speaker, mitigates the chances of casualties during a fire, and either way isolates the fire to those units or assist in containing the fire until the fire department can get there to deal with it. But now the contractor has, or the developer, the Cayman building his duplex, has that option. If they can find a way to do it that they have the external stairwell from the second floor, then they can do that and all the other requirements. Or if that is not acceptable, or they feel that they would prefer to have this sprinkler system, then they can go down that route. But we felt, and we have been pressured to find a solution to the issue of having this excessive fire sprinkling system through duplexes and small apartment complexes that Caymanians build, own, and occupy, and balancing that with life safety. And under international codes, we have identified a way to do that. So I am listening here today, and on Friday there was all sorts of accusations that we do not look out for the small people, that we are not finding ways to reduce the cost of construction for the average man on the street. And then we bring a solution, and then the members are upset with that too. So I don't understand, I don't know where else to go from here with that, Mr. Speaker. Or as they said last week, we're into the silly season. And so anything we do, anything we bring, can't be right. We're not looking out for the small man. We're not looking out, we're only looking out for the big developers, the big thing we heard earlier, the big developers. And here we are bringing amendments that affect the average contractor, average developer, the average Caymanian who wants to build a duplex and live in one half and rent the other half out. And they want to shut it down. Mr. Speaker, I hope that offers clarification, if not for honorable members in the House, in the opposition, but certainly, most importantly, for the listening public, so that they know that what we are doing is in their better interests and for the betterment and the development of our people and our country. Mr. Speaker, I do have some amendments to the motion, Mr. Speaker. I move them now, right? If, with your permission, Mr. Speaker, may I move the amendments?
No, we are debating the motion, and so we have to approve the motion. Yeah. No, I need to understand. I need to understand, Honorable Minister, I need to understand where we are at, because we were debating the motion. Do you have an amendment to the motion?
That is correct, Mr. Speaker.
As the motion is being debated, I will take a short suspension to understand what the proposed amendment to the motion is. I don't have that in my hand. So we will suspend proceedings for 10 minutes. 10 minutes, please, because we are behind time. The Honorable Assembly has resumed its sitting. Please be seated. When we took the break, the Honorable Minister of Commerce was in the process of his reply. The Honorable Minister of Commerce.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, during the course of the debate on these amendments, there became an obvious need to make some amendments to the regulations. And some that, so I do beg leave of this House to lay these amendments on the table of this Honorable House if you would.
I have given permission to the Honorable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I also have, in consultation after speaking with you and meeting with the member from Northside and my team, we also accept the member from Northside's amendments, and if it pleases the House, I would just lay those on the table as well at the same time. Mr. Speaker.
Commerce.
Mr. Speaker, if it pleases the House, I would ask that we take just 5 minutes to incorporate the two, since we're accepting the members' amendments.
So you're asking for a further suspension?
Just a few minutes of members, just so we could add it on to, so we could edit our motion, sir.
Honorable members, the House will take a further suspension, a few minutes to incorporate so that you all can stop rowing. sitting. Please be seated. I had, before the suspension, given permission to the Honorable the Minister of Commerce to move some amendments. Before that, can the Minister move the Honorable the Deputy Premier? We'll pass that over.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move the suspension of Standing Order 10-2 in order for the House to work past 4:30.
Question is that Standing Order 10-2 be suspended in order for the business of the House to continue after the hour of 4:30. All in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The Honorable the Minister of Commerce. Continuing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you so much for your patience this evening. As I said, Mr. Speaker, during the course of the debate, we found a need to make some amendments to the regulations, and with the leave of this honorable House, I'd like to lay those amendments on the table.
As I said, I have agreed. Proceed to move those amendments on.
Be it therefore resolved, the draft Building Code Amendment Regulations 2020 be approved by the Legislative Assembly in accordance with Section 42(3) of the Development and Planning Law 2017 revision, subject to the following amendments. A. In Regulations 2. 1. In the definition of the words fire code official by deleting the word anyone and substituting the words any other staff member of the Department of Planning. And 2. In the definition of the words authority having jurisdiction by deleting the words anyone, substituting the words any other staff member of the Department of Planning. 3. By inserting immediately before the definition of fire code official the following definition: duplex means two dwelling units, one above the other or side by side, having a common wall. 4. In Regulations 5, by deleting paragraph B and renumbering paragraph C as paragraph B. And 5. In Regulation 6, in the proposed Schedule 8, in the item under the words Chapter 3, the first column of which reads, amend section 305.2, outdoor swimming pools and spas. In the second column, by inserting after the word duplex, the words or hotel that provides a pool access management plan approved by the director.
Does any member wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just very briefly.
Honorable the Minister of Commerce.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Briefly, at the request of the opposition and the member from North Side, we made some amendments to the definitions of fire code official and the definition of authority having jurisdiction by deleting the word anyone and substituting the words any other staff member of the Department of Planning, just for clarity. Mr. Speaker, there's also an amendment just to clearly define a duplex, which means two dwelling units, one above the other or side by side, having a common wall. And also, Mr. Speaker, it was raised by the member from Northside regarding the concern regarding the 4-foot fencing of commercial or hotel swimming pools. And therefore, we have amended the regulations by providing an process by which the hotels can provide a pool access management plan. As I said earlier in the debate, that is whether they have the ability to close off the pool at night when the pool is closed, and during the day they would have security, lifeguards, or other pool management plans during opening hours of the pools. So, Mr. Speaker, those are the amendments, and I take this opportunity to thank the members of the opposition, the member for Northside, for their cooperation and for their proposed amendments. Thank you.
The Honorable Leader of the Opposition, I will ask members to bear in mind that they are not to revive a new debate, but to speak to the amendment as it is.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your reminder. Mr. Speaker, let me say that very briefly on this amendment, that I am happy that the minister has agreed to the concerns we had on this side. And I think this will now remove all doubt as to whether or not the director has the authority to delegate authority, and to whom he or she can delegate that authority. Now, bearing in mind, Mr. Speaker, that what is going to happen is that it should be expected, and it is expected from us anyway, that sufficient resources must be made available to that director to efficiently and effectively carry out the job of scrutinizing, inspecting, and approving development in this country. Mr. Speaker, this is a house this house is by nature adversarial. And there are times when many of us in our careers will get up here and it may become a little acrimonious. But it's not the intent of any member, I believe, in this house to infer anything that is untoward about another member, especially the government members who brings these amendments to our laws. That is the purpose of this house. That's what it was designed to do. We must not take it personal. I hope it is not taken personal. We are all Caymanians. We are all, in some instances, friends, but most of all, we are associates. And I certainly would not want anyone to infer any improper motives about myself. So if anything I said came across like that, I would like to, one, say that that was not the intent, and two, withdraw it if that is necessary. But it is, as I have said all my political career, the cause of the acrimony in any legislature comes as a result of the lack of consultation. It comes from the lack of creating committees to review these things, or giving the other side sufficient notification and engage in dialogue.
Honorable Member, you started off real good when you said this is the house of cooperation. I thought that was a blessing.
In disguise.
Is the member finished?
No, sir. But you break my train of thought then, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if I start over, then you're going to say I'm repeating myself. And you're going to rule me out of order on that too.
You've been here long enough to know that you shouldn't do that.
Yes, I do. I am. But I hear most others repeat themselves. Mr. Speaker, let me just finish up by saying I thank the government for receiving our suggestions, and I think Mr. Miller made the amendments. That was commendable on the part of the government. They saw the light. They saw that there were errors or omissions, or maybe not intentional, but we can now support the motion in its entirety.
If no other member wishes to speak, I'll call on the Honorable Minister for his right of a reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I thank the Leader of Opposition for his words and offering his support, as we all want the best for this country, these beautiful Cayman Islands, and it is certainly the responsibility that we as a government, and certainly myself as a minister for planning, that the responsibility that we have is not one that is taken lightly. And it is certainly my intention to carry out the role that I play in this government and as the Minister of Planning for the remaining months ahead as diligently as I possibly can and as dedicated as I have been over the last 3 years and months. So, Mr. Speaker, just to say that we will continue to seek ways to continue the strong economic development that we have seen in this country over the last few years, and right now, post or during, in the midst of what is still a world pandemic, an industry that has continued to carry the economy on its shoulders, and that being construction and development. But whilst we have to continue to support that industry and encourage that industry, we must do it in a responsible and planned fashion. And so again, I thank the opposition for offering their support, and I look forward to the same level of cooperation in the next motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question is, be it therefore resolved that the draft building code amendment regulations 2020 be approved by the Legislative Assembly in accordance with Section 42(3) of the Development and Planning Law 2017 revision, subject to the following amendments. A, in Regulation 2, in the definition of the words fire code official, by deleting the word anyone and substituting the words any other staff member of the Department of Planning. 2, in the definition of the words authority having jurisdiction, by deleting the word anyone, substituting the words any other staff member of the Department of Planning. 3, by inserting immediately before the definition of fire code official the following definition: duplex means 2 dwelling units, one above the other or side by side, having a common wall. 4, in Regulation 5, by deleting paragraph B and renumbering paragraph C as paragraph B. And 5, in Regulation 6, in the proposed Schedule 8, in the items under the words Chapter 3, the first column of which reads, amend Section 305.2, outdoor swimming pools and spas, in the second column by inserting after the word duplex the words or hotel that provides a pool access management plan approved by the director. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, the ayes have it. Motion. The amendment has been agreed. Does the Minister of Commerce desire to speak at this point, or?
The motion is amended now.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise just to thank the members for their tacit support in support of the amended motion.
You can say ABCs forward and backward.
The question is, be resolved that the draft building code amendments, Regulation 2020, be approved by the Legislative Assembly in accordance with Section 42(3) of the Development and Planning Law 2017 revisions. In Regulation 2, in the definition of the words fire code official by deleting the words anyone and substituting the words any other staff member of the Department of Planning. 2, in the definition of the words authority having jurisdiction by deleting the words anyone, substituting the words any other staff member of the Department of Planning. 3, by inserting immediately before the definition of fire code official the following definition: duplex means two dwelling units, one above the other or side by side, having a common wall. 4, in Regulation 5, by deleting paragraph B and renumbering paragraph C as paragraph B. And 5, in Regulation 6, in the proposed Schedule 8, in the item under the words Chapter 3, the first column of which reads, amend Section 305.2, outdoor swimming pools and spas, in the second column by inserting after the words duplex the words a hotel that provides a pool access management plan approved by the director. All those in favor of government motion number 2, 2020-2021, please say aye. Those against, the ayes have it. Government motion number 2, 2020-2021 has been passed.
Government motion number 3, Development and Planning Law 2017 revision, Draft Development and Planning Amendment Regulations 2020, to be moved by the Honourable Minister of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure.
The Honourable Minister of Planning.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move government motion number 3, 2020-2021, in the short title, Development and Planning Law 2017 Revision, Development and Planning Amendment Regulations 2020. And Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I should read the motion.
The motion has been duly moved. The Honourable Minister of Commerce.
Whereas Section 42(1) of the Development and Planning Law 2017 revision provides that the Cabinet may make regulations for the better carrying out and giving effect to the law, and whereas Section 42(3) of the law provides that no regulations shall be made pursuant to the law unless a draft of the regulations has been laid before the Legislative Assembly and a resolution approving the draft is passed by the Legislative Assembly. And whereas the draft Development and Planning Amendment Regulations 2020 were laid on the table of the Legislative Assembly, be it therefore resolved that the draft Development and Planning Amendment Regulations 2020 be approved by the Legislative Assembly in accordance with Section 42(3) of the Development and Planning Law 2017 revision.
Question is, be it therefore resolved that the draft Development and Planning Amendment Regulation 2020 be approved by the Legislative Assembly in accordance with Section 42(3) of the Development and Planning Law 2017 revision. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have laid before this Honorable House the Development and Planning Amendments Regulations 2020. Mr. Speaker, these are the substantive changes within the suite of planning amendments, the other two being the Development and Planning Amendment Bill 2020, to which was passed earlier, and the Draft Building Code Amendment Regulations. Mr. Speaker, these all go hand in hand to make a more efficient and customer-oriented department, as well as to stimulate targeted sectors and/or areas of the industry, such as the Georgetown revitalization area. We feel that these regulations will promote more environmentally friendly developments that address more efficient use of transportation, such as off-site parking, spaces for environmentally friendly vehicles or EVs, and the shuttle service such as the Georgetown hop-on, hop-off trolley soon to be introduced by my ministry. Mr. Speaker, I noted in my previous speech that I think it's important to reiterate that the ministry and the department sought input from industry stakeholders, both in the private and public sectors, while undertaking these amendments. So now, Mr. Speaker, turning to the Development and Planning Amendment Regulations 2020. First, Mr. Speaker, Regulation 2 seeks to amend several definitions that will lead to better clarity in the interpretation of the law. For instance, Mr. Speaker, presently the definition of apartment does not sufficiently define the intent of an apartment building. Similarly, there is some ambiguity with the definition of a duplex. There is also no definition for a townhouse, Mr. Speaker, which is a separate building type altogether under the building code. Coincidentally, the industry regularly interchanges these two building types. However, the building code specifically categorizes these differently because of how they are constructed and laid out. As a result, Mr. Speaker, these changes will ensure consistency when reviewing and approving such plans. In addition, Mr. Speaker, we have sought an amendment to the definition of a guest house, which I will speak to in my wind-up. Needless to say, this was a result of listening to members of the public that are concerned about the houses used for guest rentals such as Airbnb. It's an amendment. Mr. Speaker, there are 3 commercial zones contained within the Development Plan 1997 and the Development and Planning Regulations 2020 revision, namely general commercial, neighborhood commercial, and marine commercial. The draft amendments to the commercial zones are being sought in support of the revitalization of Georgetown. Mr. Speaker, we also realize that introducing these new zones and/or changing the said definitions will also have the ripple effect in other various regulations throughout this draft amendment regulation. For example, Mr. Speaker, we propose a small additional amendment meant to support the national energy policy and encourage the use of electric vehicles, to which I will speak to later. Regulation 3, Mr. Speaker, seeks to amend Regulation 6 of the Principal Regulation to provide consistency within the application process and eliminate an unnecessary limitation on the submission of plans. For clarity, Mr. Speaker, it sets out the necessary drawing requirements in a planning application. For instance, Mr. Speaker, it states, an application for subdivisions shall be made on forms provided by the director and accompanied by a plan showing the location of the site, 2, the lot layout, 3, the road layout where applicable, 4, the approximate lot sizes, 5, land uses within the subdivision, including land for public purposes where applicable, and 6, existing topographical detail. Mr. Speaker, this regulation also speaks to what is required for buildings and the like, including the scale that the plan shows to be drawn to, should be drawn to. Much of this is as a result of the department's switch to an electronic submission. Therefore, a clear guidance to applicants is provided in order to have a smooth and efficient application process. Mr. Speaker, Regulations 4, 5, 6, and 7, and 8, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 seeks to amend Regulations 8, 9, 10, 13, and 15 of the principal regulations to reflect changes to general requirements such as parking, heights, setbacks, and minimum lot sizes for the various zones such as general commercial, residential, hotel tourism, commercial zones, and beach resort residential zones, respectively. Again, Mr. Speaker, as an example, the minimum size of a house lot in a hotel tourism zone is noted as 10,000 square feet, while a duplex is 12,500 square feet. Mr. Speaker, this is simply normalizing current conditions within this zone, but not previously outlined by the regulations. This allows the CPA to apply criteria that is consistent throughout other zones for house lots, and more importantly, Mr. Speaker, what has been used in the current hotel tourism zones without the need for variances. Mr. Speaker, these clauses also address the general commercial zones in the Georgetown revitalization area, of which I spoke to earlier. It sets out the building heights within each zone that creates a stepping effect from the coastline to the inner downtown. It also provides more flexible use of the northern section of the revitalization area, known as Rock Hole, Mr. Speaker. Again, I'd like to reiterate that this was as a result of stakeholder meetings that the team has had over the tenure of the Georgetown project. Mr. Speaker, we recognize that size, density, and use of land were an important factor to the owners, residents, and developers within this area. They wanted their town to have a modern look and a feel that was Caribbean, but also distinctive with good utilization of land space by addressing building heights and then using roof space for sustainable roof gardens and terraces. Regulation 9, Mr. Speaker, repeals Regulation 23 of the principal regulation with regards to application requirements of subdivisions. As mentioned previously, Mr. Speaker, this regulation dealt with paper submissions of subdivision applications. Now that everything is online, it is more adequately dealt with in Regulation 6. Mr. Speaker, Regulation 10 seeks to amend Regulation 24 of the principal regulation by deleting the words "for apartment and hotels." This simply allows height consistency of building types within a planned area development or a PAD. Mr. Speaker, Regulation 11 in its current form within these regulations laid here today was to repeal Regulation 32 of the principal regulations with regard to public rights-of-way in a hotel tourism zone and relocating the said provision to Regulation 6. Mr. Speaker, this was in an effort to make it clearer and easier to reference as it pertained to the hotel tourism zone. However, Mr. Speaker, members of this Honorable House voiced some concerns. Therefore, we are recommending the deletion of this regulation as outlined in this draft and then simply modifying the existing regulation. Again, Mr. Speaker, I will speak to this later. Regulation 12 is a consequential amendment of Regulations 37A of the principal regulation with regards to the definition of an apartment or a townhouse. It also regularizes the infrastructure rate in Area A1 at a rate of $20,000 per unit in applications of 11 or more units. Regulation 13 and 14 seeks to amend Part 1 of the schedule, Mr. Speaker, and Part 2 of the principal regulations, again with a consequential amendment to the definition of apartment and townhouse. It also further seeks to address the building permit fee of generators and liquefied petroleum gas tanks. Mr. Speaker, this and other small changes will bring about big results, as it will incentivize the homeowner and developers alike to use clean, environmentally friendly fuels for a cleaner and more sustainable island. Mr. Speaker, Regulation 15 seeks to amend Schedule 3 by deleting the General Commercial Zone 1, GC1, and substituting it with a plan indicating the new general commercial zones, being GC1, GC2, and GC3 and 4. Mr. Speaker, these all relate to the aforementioned changes that encourages the revitalization of Georgetown. And again, we have spoken to this previously and note that we have presented larger, clearer maps for members to have sight of and draw comparisons between the proposed and the existing. Mr. Speaker, Regulation 16 seeks to amend Schedule 4, an updated map that reflects the various hotel tourism zones. Mr. Speaker, there are 3 existing resorts in the District of East End: Moritz Tortuga Club, Moritz Grand Resort, and the Royal Reef Resort, or Castaway Cove. These resorts are currently zoned hotel tourism. In an effort to be consistent with the allowable building heights for the land's zone hotel tourism 2 in the Beach Bay area, it was reasonable to also include the East End properties in Schedule 4. In other words, Mr. Speaker, we have simply made the criteria that applies to Hotel Tourism Zone 2 now apply to Beach Bay and East End for consistency and uniformity. Mr. Speaker, we believe this will only enhance the tourism product in the Eastern districts in line with our Go East initiative. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, Regulation 17 seeks to amend Schedule 5, that is, the administrative particulars of the department as it relates to fees associated with the online planning system, the OPS. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, we see how important our construction industry has become during these trying times. Mr. Speaker, we have seen some 262 certificate of occupancies issued this year alone, with a value of over $220 million. This is clear evidence that it is incumbent upon us as a government to provide strong, clear regulations that encourage and support sustainable and responsible development. In addition, Mr. Speaker, we remind members of this honorable House and the listening public that these changes were done in consultation with industry stakeholders, and while significant, are somewhat limited in part due to the recent pandemic. However, rest assured, Mr. Speaker, the government intends to continue this process primarily through the Plan Cayman initiative. Mr. Speaker, Plan Cayman will provide a continued change to the Development Plan 1997 through even greater consultation from stakeholders and our community as a whole. It will give us the ability to find that balance between our natural and built environments that respond to our cultural shift and the move towards the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of protecting our planet and ensuring that all people enjoy peace and prosperity. Mr. Speaker, I now seek the support of this honorable House for the Development and Planning Amendment Regulations 2020.
Honorable members, before we move further into this motion, I have allowed GIS to take a photograph of us sitting in our seats. So if we could bear that in mind, GIS will enter and she will leave the chamber, she will come to the bar and she will leave the the chamber, and she could possibly take some from upstairs as well. But once she leaves the chamber, we will continue on the motion. Thank you, honorable members. Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? The elected member,
Go ahead, man.
the leader of the opposition, are you taking up this offer?
Mr. Speaker,
No, we have allowed her to take some photos from up top, so bear in mind. Yes.
Mrs.
She
Speaker.
won't be long. You don't mind rising. I thought it would be okay. Once you're standing, you have already risen. It's okay. It's just that it's a possibility she can't catch everything from the floor, but has a view from from the gallery. She has completed it. If I'm setting precedent, any member that don't wish their photo taken, they got 3 doors of exit. Leader of the opposition. Leader of the opposition. Honorable member, just let me say, every one of us has been aware that today is a very special day, and we should give some leeway for photos, etc., to be taken. 30 years from now, people will be looking on. They might see pictures, they won't know who we were. If we take official pictures, have them done properly in here, people will have, and school children will have something to look at and perhaps talk about if we don't carry on so bad. Honorable member, Leader of the Opposition, you may continue.
Mr. Speaker, I hear you, sir, but I see no necessity for you to remind people of those things, because you are the presiding officer, and when those things are questioned, someone needs to teach those of us who don't necessarily know that the presiding officer calls the shots. Mr. Speaker, I know my memory mightn't be good, but I know my memory mightn't. My memory mightn't be good, but usually I know where these things are. One piece of paper they're written on. For the avoidance of doubt, the presiding officer may grant a general permission to representatives of any journal or newspaper to attend the meeting of the House, and such permission may be granted under such rule as he may make, not me, from time to time for that purpose. If such rules are contravened, such permission may be revoked. I'm not trying to embarrass anybody, but the presiding officer has. I ain't gonna share it with no one. I read it out. All right. Mr. Speaker, I rise to make a small contribution to this regulation amendment that is before us. This is Development and Planning Amendment Regulation 2020 draft. Mr. Speaker, a couple things I would like to address specifically. Mr. Speaker, I am concerned. My first concern comes from the fact that we are being asked to approve in amendment to Regulation 8 to approve to give the authority discretion, and the authority would mean the planning authority, discretion when it comes to setbacks. That is in a commercial or industrial zone. For strata lots and volumetric parcels. I believe that we, in commercial zones, we can now build on the boundary, right on the boundary, or is that only an OPY? Now, I don't know what kind of discretion we're going to give them, but the minister can respond to that. Mr. Speaker, and I might as well say the good things first because there's some stuff that I don't approve of. I note with interest that this is now extending volumetric parcels out to residential. I have argued this from, or advocated for this from the day the then Minister for Planning brought that amendment here to build over West Bay Road and to allow the DART development to do that. Mr. Speaker, my argument has always been that we get our young people coming home, and within a year or so, they may qualify for $150,000 to $200,000 in mortgage. But they can't build a house for that kind of money. But if they join forces and 6 of them go there and come together, they can purchase land and build 6 very suitable apartments for themselves. And then that is their first household, because then even that means government is going to have to waive the stamp duty, because it's under the 400,000. Those are the things we need to do to ensure young Caymanians get opportunities, first opportunities in this country. So I should, when it's due, I must applaud those who do those things. Mr. Speaker, there are 2 other areas that I want to speak to. One is Clause 11, repeal of a Regulation 32, public right-of-ways in hotel tourism zone. Now, Mr. Speaker, when I saw this, when this came out, I was incensed by it. I think I have written down alongside it, not sensitive to the ideals of Caymanian people. To give them access to the beach. Mr. Speaker, since coming here, the minister in his presentation said that they were hoping to deal with that under Regulation 6. But there's no such thing under Regulation 6. It is under 15.6. Maybe that was a mistake. I think it's 15.6, Regulation 15.6, subsection 6. But he said it was under 6. But nevertheless, he has made an amendment to withdraw that. Repeal of 32 and amend the 32 that is there. And it may be that 15 can do it. It may be, Mr. Speaker, that 15 can do it, because that too, 15 talks about um, 15.6, where planning permission is granted for a development in a beach resort residential zone, which has a frontage of 200 feet or more. The authority shall ensure that a public right-of-way to the sea is set aside and dedicated. Such a right-of-way shall be a minimum of 6 feet wide for every 200 feet of frontage or part thereof. So if you're 210, you got to provide 12 feet. And maybe within an area set aside for setbacks. That is Regulation 15.6. And 32 somewhat repeats that. Public right-of-ways in hotel tourism zone, which basically says in hotel tourism zones, the authority, when grant permission in relation to land which has a shoreline of 200 feet or more in a development other than private single-family units, shall require the owner to set aside and dedicate to the public a right-of-way of not less than 6 feet in width per every 200 feet from the public road to the sea. On the subject property, and such right-of-way may be within the area set aside for setbacks under this regulation. So I don't know why we're now making a change to say from the public road, because it's already in there. Mr. Speaker. I don't know why we want to delete the part about from the public road. Because, I mean, I guess that's obvious, eh? It would have to be from the public road. Not necessarily, though. It could be from another piece of property that a right-of-way is designated over that property. So we might get away with that. That may be the, and the little drafter here, maybe he will look at that. Mr. Speaker, so I leave that with those who are looking at this, and they are best suited to do it. But certainly in an environment like we're currently in, wherein the subject of right-of-ways are extremely topical, but more important, sensitive right now. I would not encourage us to touch too many of that. That needs to be left alone until we find some solution for what is going on in the islands when it comes to us to appease the general public on the matter of public right-of-ways, and in particular, dedicated ones. Those are the ones I want to see turn into prescriptive right-of-ways. And how we do that, we will just have to find a way to do that in order that the authority does not think they have authority over those public right-of-ways, because no one can tell me that those who came before us figured that we needed to ensure that on developed land, when we go to develop it, we would require right-of-ways to the beach to ensure that our people didn't have to go that far to get access to the beach. And they did that with a view that a few years later you could change it or relocate it. No one can tell me that was the intent of putting that provision in our laws, in our planning law. Someone needs to convince me of that. There is no way the legislators of those days thought of it in that manner. They thought of it, I believe, it's my view, that they thought of that to ensure that the people of the country in the future have right-of-ways to the beach. That could be the only reason, because they then understood that the beach was a refuge not only for entertainment, but also for fishing purposes and the likes. Therefore, it could not be that they intended that it could be changed at a later stage and put it someplace else. Like if you have a piece of property down the road, you could combine two down the road. That's not the intent. There is no way that's the intent. Could never have been the intent of the people who came before us, of the legislators who came before us. They understood the sensitivities and the need, the sensitivities surrounding beach access and the need to have beach access at different intervals along that beach. Because that's what they grew up in. That's what they knew. Many of us as well. The Premier knows it. He walked plenty of rocks in East End, barefoot too. I agree, 6 foot is not wide enough. Maybe we need to increase it, but I don't know how we would do that. I hear you, but you see the intervals of having access to the beaches so far. Not only that, I agree with the Premier that somehow get them to we should get more, and maybe the proposal is to make the owners set it aside elsewhere, but what they want to do is put you right on the iron shore. That is the problem. When they maintain the pristine, beautiful beach, then they put the public access, a combination of 2, 3 of them, right on the iron shore. That's the problem that we're going to have with this. Mr. Speaker, the other one that I want to talk about is this. Amendment to Hotel Tourism Zone 2, which is directly in the District of East End, as the member said. Now, Mr. Speaker, I have spoken briefly with some of the staff on this matter, and they have said to me that the reason this was done was because they were assured that this had my support. Now, Mr. Speaker, I'm not in the business of calling people liars, but anyone who told them that is being economic with the truth. I don't want to call them liars, but they're being economic with the truth. Mr. Speaker, no such thing has happened. Mr. Speaker, the minister said that this will enhance the tourism product on the Eastern District, keeping in line with this government's Go East initiative. I am yet to see one from this government. I know we did one in 1989 for 10 years, which involved all the people. The minister can't get up here and say that 10 stories in keeping with the Go East initiative from that period, because that is not what the people of East End said they wanted. There is nowhere in that document, to the contrary, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that document clearly states that the people of East End said, the Eastern District said, they do not want to be like West Bay Beach. Mr. Speaker, I was not a member of this honorable parliament at the time, but that document was accepted here as policy. I have tried, I have endeavored, I worked with the Premier and other colleagues in cabinet during the period 2005 to 2009. Just at the end of that proposal, and the then Honorable Charles Clifford set out to try and achieve some of that initiative, proposal. And we worked, he in particular worked very hard to try and achieve it. I have tried to adhere to, fulfill the wishes of the people of East End that I have represented since 2000. In a few days to be 20 years. Mr. Speaker, they have maintained that position that they do not want East End to look like 7 Mile Beach. That is their prerogative, Mr. Speaker. I cannot speak for Bodden Town and Northside because they are different districts. And they have their own representative who must solicit their views. Mr. Speaker, sometime last year, I met with Mr. Morit and his general manager at their club. And this is the only time I've had reason to discuss this matter. The subject of that meeting was rezoning that area. Mr. Speaker, his proposal was to go to 10 stories. Mr. Speaker, I told Mr. Morit that I could not support that based on what the people of East End, the position the people of East End had taken some nearly 20 years ago in 1989. It was 20 years ago. I told Mr. Morit that his zone was 5 stories. And I would personally support him in going to 7 stories, but I could not support him going to 10. Therefore, the subject was off the table. Mr. Speaker, anybody knows me knows that I am going to be straight up with people. I'm going to be very honest with them. I'm going to make sure I speak slowly so they understand. And that is precisely what I did with Mr. Moritz. Let's go back a few years, Mr. Speaker. When Mr. Moritz wanted to rezone across the road to facilitate his building of townhouses to enhance his business, and the then Kurt Tibbetts, minister responsible for planning, brought that rezoning here. I supported that, to support that development, and I encouraged, I cajoled, I begged the then minister Tibbetts to extend that rezone of hotel tourism all along that bluff up there, right around the corner going into Northside as well. And his response was the people didn't apply. And my response to that was, people need not apply. People, we need to enhance their lives too. And he refused to do it. Come forward a few months when Beach Bay came about. I again, Mr. Miller and I, the member from Northside and I, begged the then minister to take it all the way up to Mans Road in Buttontown so we could enhance the lives of people through the value of their property being increased. And he refused again. We hodgepodge these things. I've used that phrase for so many times in here on this development thing. We hodgepodge it too much. We allow people to come here and extract the value at great expense to our people. They go and buy these residential agricultural zones for little or nothing. And we see the direction is going in. And we don't try to expand it for our people. Mr. Speaker, it's unfortunate that I'm going to have to vote no against this. Because I really want that volumetric thing. The ability for kids to go out in the communities and build and go up in the air until they reach the clouds. I really want that. But I cannot support going against the wishes of the people of East End for 10 stories in East End. I cannot support that. And I know the staff was genuine when they said to me that their understanding was that I was in support of it. I am not doing that. Every East Ender, every resident of that district that I have asked about that have objected to it. I cannot do that. Mr. Speaker, I understand West Bay Beach. What is going to be left for us if our people, if we're just going to block their view out? There are setbacks, requirement depending on how many floors you go up. You can't even reach that up there. Some of those buildings are already deceased. The sea is lapping on their foundation. Mr. Speaker, I will support 7 stories. And even that, I'm taking my own chances that I would be going against the wishes of the people of East End. But I figured for them to extract more value, I would be able to possibly convince the people. Mr. Speaker, I want it to be known that Mr. Speaker, that Morris has been a good establishment for that district. I want that to be known. It has hired East Enders. It continues to hire East Enders. It continues to hire people from all over this island. And I'm eternally grateful for that. From the day of Susie Soto and Eric Bergstrom, that establishment has proven itself in that district Mr. Speaker, we have the Thompsons there. We now have the little bed and breakfast that people are putting down and doing exceptionally well. Then we're going to drop 10-story building right in the middle of them. And they stick out like a sore thumb. No, I don't know whose idea this was to bring this to this legislature without even consulting me. Why? Mr. Speaker, everybody in this legislature should know by now that I come here prepared, that I do research on these things. You're not going to slip it by me. Do not try that. When everybody else sleeping, I'm up 3, 4 o'clock in the morning reading. I'm not talking about members in here, I'm talking about generally. I have endeavored to do that to make sure I get the job done that I have to do for the people of East End, that I represent, that I have the honor of representing. Even the Attorney General fears me when he knows that bills are out there. And Mr. Miller. That's what we do. That's our job. That's why gray hairs are in my head. The job is to keep the government accountable. But we can't do these things without consultation, Mr. Speaker. Yes. My belief in committees are not agreed to by anyone, or by very few people. I believe committee will remove all of the acrimony and whatnot. But of course, there are those who believe that using committee means you're governing by committees. And people are afraid. Other reasons people are afraid of them is that people don't turn up to their meetings. Well, they need to be called out. That's their job too. What else are you doing? If you can't time manage, then do not become a member of parliament. And not all the time we're going to be exact with it and in line with it. But at the very least, show up sometimes. Mr. Speaker, it really bothers me that I was not consulted on this and given me the... Mr. Speaker, I had a meeting in East End recently and this came out after that. Or I would have talked about it. So I had to go around now and ask people, strategically go to members of the community to find out. Despite my belief that they weren't going to support it based on what they had said 20 years ago. Over 20 years ago now. People don't change that quickly, man. And it doesn't matter where in East End. And if they want it, then they can make those expressions known to me as well. Mr. Speaker, I'm just disappointed that it is embedded in something that I want, and I now have no choice but to vote against it. I want the volumetric thing. I really, really want that for young Caymanians. But I can't support 10 stores in East End. Mr. Speaker, they would behead me in East End. if they knew I came down here and did that. It would behead me. Mr. Speaker, I don't know what the minister can do, but I just want to vote for this to support that. If nothing else in it, I agree with the want to get that volumetric thing in there for these young kids. That's what I want. And it's not only along West Bay Road. They can own apartments elsewhere, townhouses, whatever we want to call them. What's wrong with them owning it? Everybody else building contemporary style homes, and our young people can't do it after they have been home 1 year or 2 years. Mr. Speaker, our job is to ensure the old cliche stays in place, which is mother and father may have, but blessed is the child that has his own. And this will certainly help them in that area. I spoke to Miss, what's your name again, Pandui, often enough about this. The director of planning, that is. He knows my passion to have that extended. You know that. Anyway, I don't know. I'll see what happens, Mr. Speaker. I just can't vote for this with that 10-story in there. I can't. I won't. And that is struggling with myself to make sure I support those two establishments up there. The largest timeshare in the country is right there in East End, between the North Side and East End. And as much as I want to support them, I cannot in good conscience support 10-story buildings there. Not for them, not for anyone else. Under no condition, mind you, Mr. Speaker. Maybe the people will not want me here anymore, and then they ask whoever is their representative to propose, promote, or whatever 10-story buildings. That's fine. But right now, the information that I have available to me, the knowledge that I have, based on my trying to have discussions with the people, they don't want it. They don't want 10 stories. I will support 7. I am ready to do that on the drop of a hat, but I can't support 10, Mr. Speaker. I'm sorry. And so shall it be. Thank you, sir.
We're going to suspend proceedings for the evening break to 6:45.